Welcome to ciplantgo, a podcast aimed at introducing people living a plant-based lifestyle in Japan. For this episode, I sat down with Wally, ex-omnivore and now passionate animal rights activist who started Foodfacts.jp, a website, quote, to inform the citizens of Japan of what the Japanese media are refusing to, end quote. Based in South Japan, Salmon recently came to Tokyo where he shared his experience and message during a Tokyo Vegan Meetup talk event. Asking him to be on the show was the obvious thing for me to do, and I am really grateful that Simon accepted to use some of his time in Tokyo to record our discussion. This episode starts with Simon's self-introduction and how he gave up meat. We then discuss the three pillars of veganism, the birth of Foodfacts.jp, its place in the Japanese vegan activism scene, Extinction Rebellion, flexitarianism, the environmental cost of traveling, before ending by a few rapid-fire questions. It was a real pleasure to hear Simon express his feelings and opinions about all the topics we covered. I hope you will enjoy this episode as much as I did recording it. Last but not least, you will find in the show notes links to Simon's Facebook profile, Foodfacts.jp, Extinction Rebellion Japan, and other organizations that I deemed relevant to include here. Without further ado, here is Simon Wally. All right, let's roll. So thank you, Simon, very much for being on my podcast and when you're in between trains and everything.
No worries, man. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure. So I met you at that Tokyo Vegan Meetup, the Talk Vegan Meetup, where you presented to a crowd your activism, the activism you've been evolving for animal rights and the environment, etc. Can you briefly or not so briefly present yourself, your background quickly maybe, or just your action first in the animal rights movement?
Okay. So I'm from Wales in the UK originally. I came to Asia in 2000, so I've been here basically half my life, and I was just like every other meat eater. Well, maybe I was more of a meat eater than most people in that I was eating any animals. I was eating dogs and whales and no dolphins, but I didn't draw the arbitrary line between species. And I've been in Japan since 2003 teaching English. So education is my background, and basically I was looking at the situation in Japan with climate change, and there's no one here seems to be that worried, and I'm looking at it why, and I'm thinking basically, why would they be worried? Because the media is not telling them the truth about this, right? And about 5 years ago, I watched the movie Cowspiracy. Well, let me go back a bit. Sorry, man. So I watched Earthlings in 2010, and me and my wife watched it on the Saturday night, and then on the Sunday we ate our last meat. We carried on eating fish and eggs and dairy anyway for another 5 years, and then I watched Cowspiracy in 2015, I want to say 2014. 2016, yeah. And again, once we realized what was going on with animal agriculture and how it was destroying the rainforests, emptying the oceans of all the life, 46% of all the plastic was in the oceans from the fishing industry, etc. Me and my wife again made the decision to just say, okay, enough's enough. We'll just go completely plant-based, And when we did that was, I guess, 3 years ago now. And I was trying to, obviously I'm a teacher, so I try to, make my students aware of this kind of thing as well. And some of them, in fact, some of my students are vegetarians now because of, they've been made aware of what's going on. But by and large, it's really difficult here to speak to Japanese people about veganism and why it's important, because the media doesn't talk about animal agriculture, right? So people don't know, they don't realize that the largest cause of the Amazon deforestation is animal agriculture. It's almost 90% or 91% of that. The Amazon is on fire as we speak, and the best thing that we can do to put that fire out is to stop the demanding meat, right? They're cutting down these forests because people in the West are demanding meat. Cheap meat as well, and they are also growing soy in the Amazon that they're feeding to all these animals in factory farms around the world, right? So if people are really worried, and they do seem to be worried now about the Brazilian rainforest, and they should be. It's the lungs of the planet, 20% of the oxygen is made there. It's a massive store of carbon. We cannot afford for this forest to disappear. And it looks like some scientists are saying that before the mid-century that the Amazon will be gone, right? Now, if we care about that, then we need to stop eating meat, right? But when I speak to people about this, they're just like, they think maybe you're lying, or, it's a vegan message. So I've been trying to speak to Japanese people about this for a while, not just the environment, but also the factory farms and how awful they are, right? And most Japanese people, to me, they didn't seem to be very moved by the ethics about the animals. They didn't seem to grasp that. They kind of thought it was a bit of a joke, But I think most Japanese people are really into their health, and they do care about, I think, the environment and their kids' future, right? So I decided to make a website that would do the job of the Japanese media in basically informing people about what's going on, the effects of animal agriculture on our health, on the environment. So I made a site called Foodfacts.jp, and I got lots of other vegan activists together to help translate all these all these articles from Western English media, mostly from The Guardian, The Independent, The New York Times, good solid newspapers, and they're translated into Japanese, and then we can use this as a tool to say to people, look, this is the information. Please look at it. Look at what this industry is doing to the planet. Is this acceptable? Just so that we can go and sit down in a McDonald's and eat a beef burger. Are we really willing to kill our children's future for beef burgers? Because it seems a bit stupid, right? So I made this site, and now we're just trying to get people to know about it, just to inform people about the site, that it's there, and hope that they can use it to raise awareness amongst their friends and family and students, etc.
All right. Thanks for that description.
It's a long one, yeah,
No. It's cool. It's awesome. In a nutshell, so that everyone knows where we're starting from and what we're going to be talking about. So. I'd like to go back a bit. So when you stopped meat after watching Earthling, at that time, how did it work out for you, whether it's health or socially? And also, did you already start at that point trying to address that issue to make people more aware of I guess at that time, the ethics behind meat? Or was it more like a very personal and a kind of family thing?
Yeah, I guess, to be honest, it was more personal at that time. I didn't really feel comfortable speaking about it because I was still eating fish and I was still drinking milk and I was still eating eggs. So I was like, I can't really start talking to people about the ethics, really, But of course, once I became fully vegan, then I found, okay, well, I'm in this position now where I can talk about it, and not just can talk about it, I should talk about it, because I know this information and I need to share what I know with other people, right? And what they do with that information is up to them, but I needed to do that. So it was mostly personal. At that point, I just did not feel I could continue to contribute to this industry that I knew was just so horrible. I've got nothing against animals. I've always quite liked animals, but I just never saw the inherent cruelty in this industry. I just thought when I watched the YouTube video or read a newspaper about people in a factory farm causing pain, throwing chickens around or kicking them, using them as football practice and things like that. I just thought it was bad people working in those factory farms. I didn't realize that it was the industry itself, right? That's what, if your job is to kill thousands of chickens a day, you have to be completely desensitized to that killing, right? No one can do it if you like the animals. If you respect the life of an animal, then there's no way you can kick it around like a football, or use baseball bats on it, and all the rest of it. So once I realized that was inherent in the system, that there's no way, it doesn't matter if you get your grass-fed cows or your free-range chickens, they all go to the same slaughterhouses. They all go on the same long journeys from their farm to their deaths, wherever they are. Maybe it's freezing cold in the winter and they freeze to the side of the truck, or maybe in the summer they're dying in the heat, you know. Once I realized that was the case, I just could not justify doing it anymore. So, and my wife felt the same. So yeah, we stopped. But it was definitely personal at that time.
All right. Did you, throughout those, I think it's, wait, you told me 10 to 5, right? So five years of vegetarian? Pescitarian? Yeah, sorry. So pescitarian. How did your knowledge about the situation or your viewpoint about everything that we're still consuming, where was it? How did it evolve, if it moved? And if it was already like you were thinking in one way but not really acting upon those feelings, those thoughts, those opinions, what was the hurdle there for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right, because I definitely wasn't living, my value system and my actions were definitely not aligned then, right? I don't believe in violence. And I was consuming eggs, and I was consuming milk. They come from violence, right? You do not get milk from a cow without violence. You do not get eggs from chickens. Well, I mean, you can do, of course, but we were buying free-range eggs, and then I thought, oh, that's fine, they're free-range, right? But then I realized that actually these chickens have been bred to grow ridiculously quick in the 6 weeks they're on this earth. Whether they're free-range or not, they can't walk after about 5-6 weeks.
Yeah, I'll interrupt here because I think here I might be wrong, but maybe you're talking about like the chicken that I made for like meat first and foremost. Those are like in 6 weeks they're grown full.
Right. Yeah.
Weight.
Okay.
Like
the eggs we get 2 years.
Yeah,
or whatever,
the egg-laying hens, they're bred also for
Right,
that purpose.
you're
they
right,
grow less, not as
They
fast.
have more eggs every year, right?
But then
right.
you kill all the male chicks when they just like been born. Plus the egg-laying hens, they're being sent to slaughter after 2 years or even less because they're producing less eggs at that time. It's cheaper to buy a new one that's going to make more eggs, right?
Right. And their feet are growing, deformed around the cages, right? And they can't. There's nothing they can do. They can't open the wings at all.
Yeah, when it's a cage factory. Yeah.
But even the ones again, free-range eggs. I mean,
it depends on what the law says you can have like being included in that term, that word, like free range. I've visited one myself before stopping eggs, and it was really free range.
Okay. Right.
I mean, they were not outside, but it was in a huge barn with like a lot of. It wasn't even windows. It was kind of transparent, like kind of sheets of like walls or whatever, and so they were free to move around, like. And they seem pretty happy as far as like free-range chickens go, but it was all the same as far as where they come from, where they'll go, and all the male chicks that got killed in the process. So it's still not cruelty-free at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess like I don't know so much about Japan. I'm talking about in the West. It seems that free-range means that they have to have access to outside, right?
Yeah. That's the case.
But that access to outside is only good enough if they can get out there, right?
Yeah, it's and like cage-free means like the cage has to be bigger, but it can still be a cage,
Yeah, I mean the whole system is as far as it was against my value system anyway, right? And as soon as we were buying these free-range eggs and we were eating fish, and I guess I didn't think about it that much, we thought we were doing the right thing by being pescitarian, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, still lots of people think, I didn't think this, I was aware of it, that fish feel pain, but a lot of people say to me, fish don't feel pain. And I'm like, I was fishing, I was catching my own fish. And trust me, these fish feel pain, right? They're not, it makes no sense for any animal to not feel pain. How would they have evolved to escape danger if they didn't feel pain, right? It's absolutely ridiculous that people say any animal doesn't feel pain. So I was kind of just, I guess trying not to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to trap you, right?
But
I'm fascinated by, usually with every guest I have, to get to know the backside of the story a bit, because I think it's hard to really pinpoint the moment where there's this switch where you decide on acting upon your values as a future only plant-based eater, and I'm really interested to know what you remember of how that I mean, we don't need to spend that much time on it, but definitely.
We just didn't. I mean, we actually thought at the time where after we watched Earthlings, I mean, myself and my wife, we talked about veganism as an option, you know. But my wife at this point was 4 months pregnant with my son, so we were like, you know, we don't know enough about this. We don't know enough about the nutrition, right? Plus, it's kind of difficult to be a vegan in Japan. Well, it was in 2011 anyway, and pescitarianism for us just seemed like a kind of a nice little compromise, you know. And I guess we got caught up in it for a while, you know, and we needed that kind of, you know, we needed, I guess, the second. The way I look at it, there's 3 reasons to be vegan, and I think I talked about it at the event.
The talk event, yeah.
That each of them on standalone is a good enough reason to become vegan, right? The ethics is there for all to see. Anyone that argues that it's not a more moral baseline to be vegan than to eat meat, you know, is crazy. It's that alone is good enough reason. Then you have the health. It's pretty clear from the evidence that's coming out now that too much meat, especially processed meat and red meat, is not good for us. It's chicken as well seems to be, you know. Lost my track now. So I was talking about each of these two, and then you have the environment. I mean, for me, the environment and ethics are the most important, right? So I think it's possible and it's a good idea based on each one of these 3 pillars to become vegan. But for me, I think I needed at least 2, you know, to push me there. And that for me was the environment. You know, the ethics, I got it, and I was like, you know, I hated doing that to animals, you know, with no need, you know, just because I liked cheese, and I did love cheese. I used to, you know, just eat a lot of it, you know, and but for me, I was one of those people, I guess. I needed 2 of those pillars. Some people will need 3, and many more don't even seem to care, even when they're faced with three of those pillars, right? You're like, how is this not, you know, abundantly clear to you that we need as a species to change, right? We need to change what we're doing, the way we're living, and so I think, for me, I needed that second pillar, which was the information about the environment. Once I had that was it. I was done. And each day, as I get stronger and I know more about the ethics, I know more about the environment, I know more about the health, and I know more about climate change or the climate crisis, the more and more I speak out about it, the louder I am. And, you know, I think lots of people are the same. It's change is coming, right? And whichever way we look at it, change is coming. In the next 30 years, the world is going to be completely different. What we do today, the choices we make today are going to decide where we are in 30 years. We might be in a much more utopian place, right? We might have free healthcare for all. We might have people respecting each other all around the world. We might have thriving forests. We might have thriving oceans. We might have, you know, the sound of birds every morning all throughout cities, the countryside. It might be coming alive again with bees and pollinators and earthworms. And, you know, we could be going in the right direction, or we could be going to a completely terrible place. And right now, it looks like we're going to the latter. You know, we're moving towards Donald Trump and Boris Johnson, and we're going to the right. And I think we're in big trouble if we don't start to make the changes and kind of move in the more sustainable route, right? But at the moment, there's a lot of hatred, and it seems that, you know, we are going to go in the wrong direction, which is frightening for me as a father, and also just as a person, you know, because it's not like this is way off in the future. People talk about 2100 all the time as if it's like, you know, and that's out of our range. We're like, oh, it's okay. But long before 2100, you know, in 10 years' time, before that, 2025, India is looking at most of its major cities running out of water. That's over 1 billion people there that are going to be looking for somewhere to move, right? You've got Pakistan right next door, 2 nuclear powers that really don't like each other very much. Pakistan's in the same situation. They're running out of water. And if you're running out of water, you've got no food. You've got no food, you've got no water, then people are going to fight, right? So you've got 2 nuclear powers right next to each other who have a history of not liking each other. And this is going to happen all around the world, all these countries. It's going to happen in Africa first, South America. It'll happen in South Asia, Southeast Asia. but then it will come to us, right? A lot of our food is coming from those countries anyway. If they can't provide food for their own citizens, then they're not going to be able to provide food for us. So anything that happens in these countries, these poor countries first, will come to us. And it's frightening. It's something we should all be very, very mindful of. And, for me, the biggest thing that we can do as individuals right now is to move to plant-based diets and to start talking about this problem.
All right. A lot of things to unpack here. And and still going to your own initiative as an activist. So when you went full plant-based with your wife and you tried at that point to start really talking to people, at which point did you think that you had to do something more than just talk to those people around you, and when did you have this idea of that website of the Foodfacts.jp?
Right, well, yeah, so I think I said in the event, which is when I watched that Cowspiracy movie straight away, I was actually really excited after watching it. I was like, oh my God, we can actually make a dent in climate change here just by getting people to change their diets, right? And I was just like, wow, I couldn't wait to get out and talk to people. So I did. I went into school, talked to teachers, talked to students, and then I was just met with this wall of people that just didn't care, right? And that straight away then I was like, okay, we need to do something about this, because I cannot allow these people to, what's the word for this? Greedy people? I don't know. People, they don't. Just, I could not stand aside and watch the world being destroyed in front of my eyes when my son is so small that he can't do anything about it, right? This is his future. So I thought, okay, we need to start doing something. But it wasn't until maybe about, I guess, what was it, a year ago maybe, that I had the idea about Food Facts. And I said to my wife about it, and she was like, oh, it's a great idea. So we started working on it. Yeah. That was, I guess, yeah, if that answers your
All right, yeah,
question.
sure. And so you said earlier that you started Food Facts also because the Japanese media is not providing that kind of information to the public. Are you yourself someone who watches either television or reads the news, or because it's not like I'm trying to tap what you're saying. I'm not aware of what the Japanese media is talking about because I'm not watching it. And so are you yourself familiar with everything going on in the Japanese media?
Yeah, not really, no. But my wife, I rely on my wife and my other Japanese people. I mean, I guess but you're right, yeah. I mean, I don't know what's going on in the media because I don't read Japanese.
Okay.
And I don't even have my TV connected to Japanese TV. So no, I don't. And I know it's there sometimes, I get that. But it definitely, I mean, last year there was, in the last 2 or 3 years, there's been so many articles coming out from WWF reports saying that, headlines like meat eaters it's official, meat eaters are destroying the planet. These are kind of like, wow, look at these headlines that's coming out in the English media, right? And I don't think, when my wife sees this, she's like, no, this is not, I haven't seen this in Japan, right? And I just think from talking to Japanese people, they seem so unaware of it that I think surely the media can't be talking about it. Otherwise, people would be more aware, right? But maybe it's just that they don't read the media, print or watch TV. I don't know. Yeah,
it might be that the Japanese media is very much just kind of isolated, island, and they're not really in touch with what's happening in some areas of the news in the West. I mean, they definitely know big stuff that sells, but there's also the part of probably the message that's not very welcome by the public. And so because it is challenging to challenge people in their values, in their habits, and also bring up those topics. Like, for example, in the West, if you look back way before I was vegan, even if it's 10, 20 years ago, what are the media talking about as far as food and animal rights is concerned? Pretty much nothing, I would suspect, right, compared to nowadays. So there's been a lot of changes in the West. And since you brought up kind of a pessimistic view about the current state of things and the trends and everything, how do you see that trend of raising awareness in the West especially, but also to some extent here. Do you think, like, what does it make you feel like as far as like a prospective future?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not. I get what you're saying, that my image of the future, you could see it as pessimistic, right? I personally don't. I think it's realistic that is what is going on, right? It's
sure.
I get it that it's quite a dark image, and people, oh, that's pessimistic, but it's kind of realistic, right? That this is where we are, right? And unless we, address this very quickly, that is where we're going to end up. But having said that, obviously I'm an optimistic person, right? I wouldn't be making websites about this if I wasn't optimistic. I really think that we can change the world, right? And I want to be part of that. And I think veganism is just one tool in that toolkit that we need, right? To change the world, to make it a better, more sustainable place, And so yeah, I think it's realism. My pessimism is realism as the world where we could go. I'm not saying that is where we are going to go. That's why I'm active, and that's why I'm trying to make other people active, because we could change things very, very quickly if we get enough people on board, right? I'm reading this book at the moment, which is The Blueprint for Revolution, and it's a great book. It gives good ideas about how this non-violent revolutions are successful. So it's I think it is possible that we can get there. Groups like Extinction Rebellion and Fridays for Future and all these groups now are coalescing. They're all coming together, and I do see really, really positive signs, right? That people are waking up. They are coming around. But most of these people are in Western countries, right? I don't see it so much in Japan. I mean, you might get 20 or 30 people marching for Fridays for Future or something like that. But it's definitely happening much quicker in the West, which is, I mean, we've both lived in Japan for a while, so I think we understand that things take a long while to change in Japan, right? It doesn't happen overnight here, so it's going to take longer, and I think it's going to be hard, but we need to double down on our efforts, right?
All right, yeah, sure. And since you started Food Facts, what kind of feedback did you get from both the Japan vegan sphere, I would say, but also like the people you are trying to reach with that website?
Right, with the people I'm trying to reach, I'll start with the vegans who know about it and are using it. They've really, really positive feedback and saying it's great, it's what we needed, because there just wasn't really that much information there in Japanese, and especially now it's all in one place, so you can just go there. It's in English, it's in Japanese, and so mostly positive feedback from that. People who I want to use the site as a tool to raise awareness for, I'm not so sure. I don't know.
Okay, so it's like ongoing process.
Yeah,
You're still like waiting to get really. I mean, it's only been a year or so, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's like it's growing all the time because there's loads and loads of information there in English, but it's been translated, right? Okay. And we only have a small team of translators who do a great job. They're fantastic. They give up, hours of their time every week to do this. So massive shout out and thank you to all of them. But it takes time to build up that catalogue of articles. But it's getting there. I think we're probably about 75% up to date now. And then each new article that comes in will slowly be added to it. So yeah, once it's, once I start to use it a bit more, then as a tool, then I'll get that feedback, I guess.
All right. And so you're having translations from English language articles and the like, but are you also looking, or are some of your team also looking at what's being published in the few things that might be published in the Japanese media, or even not the mainstream media, but journals like reports like those from the ARC, the Animal Rights Center Japan, or stuff like that? Is someone like kind of trying to include that in the same resource center that is your website, or not yet?
Well, I mean, I think this will answer, but we do put Japanese articles on there as well. If there is a link to an article that's in the media in Japan, there are a few, then I will put that on the site, a link to it from the site, you know. So that goes on there as well. And what was the second part?
So because, for example, I don't know all the associations in Japan that are doing their own kind of research for facts about the factory farm industry in Japan.
Right,
like, for example, I know the ARC is doing this to a certain extent, and they publish, is it a trimestral or something like that, that kind of report with the news. I must admit, I haven't read it. It's obviously all in Japanese, but I have seen it like firsthand, and I was curious to know if that kind of information, that might be the kind of information that's not available anywhere else, that might be beneficial to spread it out more, like, because they have this website themselves. For example, I'm taking this example of the Animal Rights Center Japan, located here in Shibuya in Tokyo, but they're also like a very small team, I think 3 full-time and like some volunteers on the side, but they have this website where they're trying to have also, I think, data that would be used for advocacy purposes. And so I was curious to see if that kind of data, you were considering it as something that you would want to add to the data pool that you have on your website.
So that information is related to the environment and health?
Oh, that's right. I might not be directly related to either of those. They're very focused on the ethics, and on the like kind of the practices of the industry.
And so this is like, you may be able to help me with this. Like my wife and I considered putting the other pillar. So at the moment we have 2 of the 3 pillars on this site, right?
Yeah.
One is, obviously the environment, and the other is the health. We've discussed whether we should also put, videos that we can find from Japanese factory farms and things like that as a separate page, and we don't really know what to do about that.
All right.
We're kind of like, we don't want it to be seen as like, this is, Japanese people look at, it's about the animals, which I don't know whether that's the right thing to do or not. So it would be good to get other people's input on that. I'm open-minded, But
I totally get you there, because I always say that for the Japanese public, like people who are not already sensitized to that kind of problematic, talking about ethics is the wrong first approach. Yeah. And so if that's really what pops up when you look at your website, and like with videos and everything, that might just push some people off.
Right, yeah.
But on the other hand, what you always often get with people, even those who have seen footage like Earthlings or Dominion or whatever, is, but Japan is better.
Right.
Or and I mean, even when you show them some footage of Japanese factory farm like facilities, sometimes they go like, this is an exception.
Yeah.
So you can never convince someone who's not ready enough to be convinced.
Sure.
But I was thinking that if you have data and like kind of facts that's present, like facts with sources, etc., about the practices that are taking place in Japan for like pigs, cows, chicken, everything, and also facts about what's the legal framework, like how's the law saying like the factory farm facilities should be run, etc., right? And just to make people aware that no, Japan is not better off as far as the logo, the logos and everything, like the practices are not better, like it's not more humane. And I don't know what's the best approach for your website, but if I was like kind of a bit worried that it would push people off, I might just have no graphical violence there, right? No videos, no pictures, and just the facts in text. And people, when you see a wall of text or just a page of text, you're not especially attracted to it, but at least it's there. And if you have good sources, they might be like, okay, well, that's that. And
well, I mean, there's definitely when I was teaching in Hiroshima, I put together this big kind of an essay that I used with my English students, and I sourced all this information. The headmaster at the school said you can't show them any videos, right?
Yeah,
you can't do that, but you can explain to them. So I put this I wrote down everything, I researched it, and you're right, by the way, about every single country. People in each different country, they say, oh, that doesn't happen here, right? They think that their system is better and that's not going to happen here. And Japan is no exception. My students, before I split up for the summer holidays, they were saying to me, oh man, vegans are so annoying, they're so annoying on Twitter. And I was like, why is that? And they said, oh, they're always lying. I said, what do you mean they're lying? He said, oh, look, they tell me that this is happening to cows and things. And I said, yeah, well, that's because it is happening to cows, that this is what happens to them. They're not lying. He said, yeah, but the farmers say that if they hurt the cows, then their milk productivity goes down. So, of course, they're not going to be nasty to the cows, And I was like, well, you're believing the industry there, right? The industry is telling you, don't worry, everything's fine. Would you believe that, burning coal and burning is fine if the industry told you? Of course you wouldn't, right? You don't believe the people who are causing the damage when they say that no damage is being caused, right? So, yes, people do definitely think that it doesn't happen here. And actually, Japan has some of the worst animal rights. It doesn't have any animal rights for farm animals as far as I know. They have their teeth pulled out with no pigs. They have their teeth pulled out with no anesthetic, which doesn't happen in the West. Of course, they do the tail docking, no anesthetic, and of course they do castration with no anesthetic. But they also pull out the teeth, which is not done in the West, right? And I've been in so many. I've worked right next to factory farms for chickens, and I've looked inside and I've seen them. Man, they're worse than anything in the UK. They're terrible. They don't care about animals here. They really don't have any. I mean, look, I'm not painting this picture of the UK as they've got all these great animal rights, because they don't. But the way the welfare there is terrible as well. Any factory farm, right? There's no welfare in a factory farm. But Japan is definitely not better. In many ways, it's worse than it is in the West, because we do have some tiny rules and laws for factory farms. We're getting rid of, I think, veal crates in the European Union, or they've gotten rid of.
I think it's not existing anymore,
right.
At least as far as the law is.
So that's better than Japan. You can still do that here, veal crates, right? We're looking at getting rid of cages, I think, right, for chickens. I think in the European Union. Of course, Britain won't be part of that European Union for much longer, but. So any Japanese people who think that things are better here than they are in other countries are just misguided. Do your research, because actually the animals here have a much, much worse time than they do elsewhere,
Yeah, but it's really like access to that data, as far as because there's so few associations that are advocating for animal rights and reporting on how things are done here, that information is really hard to find, I think. And so I'm not I don't think your website is that prominent yet. People don't find it that easily yet, right? But the more that kind of information spreads, the most chances people just stumble upon it. And so it's definitely one thing that needs to be addressed, is that people who have those kind of reasons to not act upon what they think is right or wrong might think twice if they realize that how things are done in Japan is not better. And so I was wondering if you had been considering that kind of content, but
we have, and it's something we definitely consider doing in the future. Maybe I'd contact Animal Rights Center and see if we can use some of their information, maybe.
Yeah, if you do contact them, at the moment, one of, I think probably their best English speaking staff member, I just happened to have to be my previous podcast guest. The podcast is not out yet, but his name is Yuki. He's almost more American than Japanese, so he would be. You wouldn't need translation going on really to see if there's something that can help one or the other of you guys.
Right, yeah, because I mean, it would. I assume it would be better on their site if they were to put some information about the environmental impacts, right? I mean,
maybe they would be interested in that, but I guess they're just they have their hands full, and they're just I don't think they can really expand the scope of their advocacy actions. and so I don't know how that would happen.
Sure.
But as long as like a common goal for everyone here, and if there's groups that can help one another in one way or another, I think it's better to just do your thing on your own, etc. But I mean, not to say that what you're doing is not enough, right? I mean, it's amazing that you've been really investing so much time, energy, and that it's been, as far as I understand it, like successful to this extent. Because I mean, for example, in my case, I've started this podcast also because it's something that I'm interested in doing in and of itself, but it definitely doesn't resonate, I think, as much as what I've seen you doing with your website. So
yeah, well, thank you, man. I think anything is good, right? We all need to do something. Every little helps, and it's like we can always do more. And I feel like a lot of the time I'm not doing enough, right? I've just spent a month with my dad traveling around Japan. I've flown 3 times in that month. I feel terrible about that, man, and it's but there's only so much we can do, right?
Plus you have to keep like a healthy emotional and like physical life for yourself to be in order to like fight the good fight, right?
Exactly. You can't burn out, right? Which is easy to do. It's but for some, I mean, like that hasn't happened to me so far, man. I've got so much energy, and you saw my dad, right?
Yeah.
He's got quite a bit of energy. He's 82, but he's been putting all that energy into like making people laugh and well, women, I suppose. Whereas I'm kind of putting my energy towards different causes, and like it feels good, right? It makes it makes me feel fucking really happy, man. Since I've been vegan, I don't want to say this is like because of being vegan, but I've got so much energy now, right? And a lot of vegans say the same thing, right?
Yeah, they do.
But I did have energy before as well. It wasn't like I was just this slumbersome guy before. I wasn't. But I've got so much energy now, and I'm like, I feel just like, come on, this is our time, right? This is our generation's time to step up, and let's do what we're supposed to do, right? We're not supposed to just watch as the world crumbles around us, right? This is not what kind of a species would do that, right? So to me, it's like, this is our time. Let's do it, man. Let's get together. Let's change the world, right? And veganism, without a doubt, veganism is coming, right?
Yeah.
It's coming, whether it's going to be needed because we're not going to have any land, left. So we'll have to be vegan, or it's going to come around because we've actually found ourselves again, right? That we're humane, we're human beings, right? We've come so far, right? Over the last few hundred years, we've got ended slavery, we've got, women in the workplace, there's been so many gains. Nothing's perfect, but we're moving in the right direction. But when it comes to animals, the non-human animals, we're going in the wrong direction. We've gone in the last 50, 60 years. People born today think factory farming is normal. It's not. This is something that came around in the 1960s so that corporations could increase their profits. They realized that if we treat these animals like cogs in a system, then we will make more money. If we treat them with respect, then we will lose money. Because if we treat them with respect, we have to leave them outside. We have to allow them to forage. We have to allow them to, walk on grass and feel the sun on their backs. And that costs money because it costs more space, right? It takes more space. And these corporations realize, hang on, if we get them all inside, feed them these ridiculous crops that beef them up, we give them all these different antibiotics so that they don't get sick because they're in close approximation, that, factory farming is something that's very new, and it's going the wrong way, and it's getting worse and worse. We're treating them worse and worse to cut corners and to increase profits all the time. So everywhere else seems to be going in the right direction. Yeah, I mean, you could, until Donald Trump was elected, things seemed to be going in the right direction, right? Slowly but surely we were getting there. We were treating, gays, the LGBT movement definitely was going in the right direction, right? And now you're seeing like all this, people talking about, homophobic insults at gays again, right? This is something that hasn't happened for a long time. And it's starting again. You're starting to see this anti-Semitic behavior now that's in the open. Europe is terrible. People talk, the Islamophobia and stuff. It's, this has only happened in the last 5-10 years, really, and it's really exacerbated under Trump because he's enabled people, he's emboldened people, right? But we were going in the right direction, I think, probably until 2008, until the financial crisis, maybe. And then, but when it comes to animals, we're going in the wrong direction very rapidly, right? Family farms they're going out of business. Everything's going to factory farms now, and they're proliferating all over the world. In Africa now, you're getting factory farms, and it's just the wrong way. This one tenet of our society is we need to realize very quickly that animals are basically here with us, and this is not who we are, right? We're better than this. So,
all right.
That was a rambling one.
No worries. Just get it out. I mean, it makes people think it's all good. And to go back to Foodfacts.jp, like, what's your next few steps as far as do you have something planned already, or is it more like you're taking things as they come?
Yeah, taking things as they come, and that's my personality. I mean, not really. I mean, what I would like is once it's all finished, we will think about what we're going to do. I would love to get documentaries translated into Japanese so that we can put those on there as well. But they would have to be on YouTube, which is, I mean, if we can get them translated into Japanese, I would love videos to be on there, but that might be a problem with copyright,
with the rights,
etc. Right? So, I'm not sure about that, but that would be great. I mean, we've got videos there at the moment, links to videos, so people can find them themselves. But not really any specific plans on that. I'm more at the moment. I've got Food Facts up and running now. It's up to other people to help translate. So right at the moment, I'm more focusing on Extinction Rebellion. Can
you extend on that, Extinction Rebellion? What are you planning with that?
Right. Well, I mean, I started the. I think everyone's pretty much aware of Extinction Rebellion, but just in case they're not, Extinction Rebellion is a group that was founded in the UK a couple of years ago. Last year, they got a lot of attention in November by declaring this rebellion against our coming extinction, because we're in the middle of the 6th extinction and it's happening much, much quicker than we thought. People think, doesn't matter if polar bears go extinct and we don't have lions anymore, but those are the most, visible signs of it, but they're not really the most important. The most important, if you're looking from our perspective, it's the smaller things like the worms and the bees. They're going extinct now, right? And without those, we can't grow food anymore. So, we're in the middle of this 6th extinction, and we will be part of it unless we get a grasp on it. So Extinction Rebellion was set up in the UK with the intention of with basically 3 demands. One is that the government tells the truth, because right now they're not telling the truth to people, that we don't have much time left. So they want the government to tell the truth, they want the media to tell the truth, and they also want to move to 100% renewable sources of energy by 2025, which is obviously only 5.5 years away. And the third one is they want to have a citizens' assembly to get together with the government to decide on future direction, right? Those are the 3 demands. And in April this year, Extinction Rebellion shut down four areas of London by having these incredible carnival type kind of experiences where people got together and they sang and they danced, but they essentially shut down the city. And the police are kind of like, well, what do we do about this, right? Because they're not breaking any laws. They're just being kind. They're kind to the police. They're talking to the police, chatting with them. So the police are in a bind, because if they crack down on them, it makes the police look bad. It makes the government look bad. So they kind of have to step back. But then if they step back, of course, they give they give a kind of a free roll. Okay, go on to Extinction Rebellion, to the activists, right? So they're in this kind of like a bind. But what happened was 2 weeks after that, they shut down London. The UK government declared a state of a climate emergency, right? So, of course, they haven't done anything yet. They've just said, it's just rhetoric at this time, but it's what a great outcome, right? After, just 1 week of shutting down London, the four areas of London, the government is taking action, right? And they've decided, the UK government has brought forward they were planning to be 100% renewables by 2080, and now they've brought that forward to 2050. So the Extinction Rebellion so far has had incredible success in the UK. And they're moving into countries all around the world now because, of course, global warming, it's a global crisis, right? So in Japan, I set up the Facebook page and the Facebook group for Extinction Rebellion in Japan in like November, December of last year. And now we've got about 350 people in the group. And we're still we're not at the stage like they are in the UK where they're basically going to shut down London again and other cities in the UK in October. We're not going to do that at the moment in Japan because I don't think people are ready for it. They would just think, oh, who are these hippies, right? What are they doing? But in the UK, the media has been covering the climate crisis a lot better than they have in Japan, right? So people in the UK are like, oh, shit, this is quite scary. They're finally opening their eyes up because the media is telling them the truth in many ways, right? And it's very uncomforting when you're faced with that. So in Japan, we're kind of in this, the embryonic stage at the moment where we're trying to get Japanese people involved. There's a lot of foreigners. We do have a lot of Japanese as well, but it's probably skewed to like 80% foreigners, 20% Japanese. So we're waiting until the numbers are the opposite. We need to have, 80% Japanese, 20% foreigners. When we get to that kind of stage, all the foreigners in the group will just not give up, but we will, it'll be, okay, this is the Japanese. This is not a foreign initiative, it's Japanese run, it's Japanese organized, and then the Japanese people will decide what they think is best to do. Maybe it's shutting down areas of Tokyo, or maybe they think that's not the way we should do it in Japan, right? Every country has to be different, but it needs to be led by the local population in each country. So at the moment, we're just trying to get as many Japanese members as we can and find someone or some people to kind of organize effectively. And so that's what's going on with Extinction Rebellion at the moment, just raising awareness.
All right. What kind of actions are you guys taking to try and get more people, especially Japanese-speaking people, Japanese locals, into that movement? Is it like kind of leafleting, or like just organizing meetups, or just like only online? What kind of things are you doing? Yeah,
both. We've got we've got an Extinction Rebellion meetup that we're doing once a week now, where it's kind of like a translation meetup where everybody gets together and they will translate documents and have a bit of it's a kind of a party atmosphere where but they're working on translating different articles into Japanese so that we can share that information. Then we use the Facebook page to share information. We also we spend about we spend some money advertising. So we send out adverts on Facebook to different kind of age groups, etc., trying to find more Japanese people to come on board. We give talks. I gave a talk at the vegan festival in Fukuoka in Golden Week, I think it was. And different members are doing different things. There's been an Extinction Rebellion party in one of the pubs here. There was maybe 50 people or something. Everyone's having a good time. People giving speeches, singing, and it was good. I didn't go because I live in Kumamoto, but it looked good. The videos I saw, so. It's happening slowly, and I urge anybody that listens to this, I don't know, wherever you are, to join Extinction Rebellion. Even if you're a vegan, lots of vegans are like, I don't want to join Extinction Rebellion because they're not a vegan group. But what you'll find is a lot of people in Extinction Rebellion are vegan. Of course, a lot of people aren't. But what I found is most people in Extinction Rebellion are definitely more open to veganism than the general public, And, it doesn't, for me, it doesn't really matter. There won't be animals left on this planet if we don't come together, right? So we need to kind of, forget about who's vegan, who's not vegan. We're all on this planet together, and we all need to get together and do something right now, right? As I've said, I think I said earlier, the future is going to be vegan. I have no doubts in my mind about that. But first and foremost, we have to make sure that we have a future. And I think Extinction Rebellion is the best group I've seen capable of bringing about that change. So, yeah.
All right. Very interesting indeed. Like I had heard about it, but I hadn't looked into it, and so I might have a look at what's happening here in Tokyo.
Yeah.
But I'll definitely link that into the show notes so that people can find it easily. I mean, I guess just a Google search or Facebook search will be enough. But
yeah, Extinction Rebellion Japan and XR Japan is the Facebook group.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And just bouncing on that the part of your reply, like the part of your speech here where you said that a lot of people are not vegan in that group. And obviously, like if there's enough people to kind of shut down some areas of London, there's definitely not everyone going to be vegan in that kind of group.
Yeah.
But I remember when you did your talk for the Tokyo Vegan Meetup event a few weeks ago, that your approach, obviously it's a Tokyo Vegan Meetup, so that was the main part of the message, I suppose, but the way you presented things were very much like there's no reason to not be vegan, and very like kind of straight to the point. I would even say for some people probably aggressive, especially if they're not vegan yet. And so I was curious to know your stance on not being vegan, but just like reducing your consumption of animal products, and how that fits within the broader picture of aiming for a more sustainable lifestyle for us human on the planet.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, from an environmental point of view, I'll be honest, nobody needs to be vegan, right? You could probably eat meat once or twice a week, and it could probably be sustainable, right? Factory farming would have to end. The animals would need to be on, and this is from an environmental point of view, right? I'm not talking about ethics or anything. Any of the pasture lands that we've got, the prairie lands in the Midwest, in America, for example, those could technically convert grass that we can't eat into animal protein that we can, right? So from an environmental point of view, it's impossible, I think, to argue for complete veganism for everybody, right? But the point, as I think I said about in the vegan meetup then, is like, well, if we are going to allow animals back onto prairie lands, why do we need to eat them? Why not reintroduce the apex predators that we've killed already, and then we'll have a functioning ecosystem, right? So just because we can technically turn that grass into protein, why do it? Why wouldn't we want to have these functioning ecosystems that exist without human control, right? I know, from a personal point of view, I would love to be able to go into the countryside or into forests, and you could like have predators there that are taking care of the overabundance of herbivores, for example, right? We don't have to get involved in that. But getting back to the answer to your question is that if you're cutting down on meat, great, well done, all the credit to you. And I say that because you're clearly aware of the problem, and that's step number one, right? You're aware of the problem. You're a flexitarian because of whatever. Maybe it's so that you can afford to buy what you consider to be ethically raised animals. You have to pay more money for that. Therefore, you should eat. If you ate less, it would roughly equate to the same spend, right, weekly. But more importantly for me is that if you are going 1 day a week without meat or 2 days a week without meat, on those 2 days that you're not eating meat, you're learning how to cook plant-based food, right? Now, once you get into the habit of eating plant-based food and experimenting with plant-based food, then you're going to be like, oh shit, man, this is actually fucking good. Your attitude is going to be gone from it. If you're eating meat every day, and you can't imagine people eating plants and being happy with that, right? But then once you start to eat this 2 days a week or 1 day a week, whatever it is, then you're more open to eating more and more of that food, right? So I applaud anybody that is trying to cut down. It's a great way to do it. You don't have to be vegan overnight, and just do it and keep cutting down, right? It's no one's saying anybody has to be vegan overnight. It's it's kind of it's a hard ask for a lot of people, right? For a lot of people, it's not. A lot of people go vegan overnight, and then the next day they're like, "Everybody, you should be vegan. I can't believe you're eating meat." And it's like, you were fucking meat eater yesterday, So it's like no one's saying. I'm certainly not saying that anyone has to be vegan overnight. But what I do expect from my fellow human beings is that they care about the future of our species and the future of our planet, right? Which means you need to cut down on what you're eating, especially red meat. I think that's I'm not asking anyone to be vegan, and I'm quite happy to be friends with people and have family members who are not vegan. But if they're not even considering cutting down, it's kind of like, well, what the fuck are you doing, man? We're in this existential crisis for the future of our species, and you can't even do less of something that's bad. If you're flying 10 times a year, can you not fly 9 times a year? And then try and get down to 8 and 7. Everybody can make different changes in their lives, myself included, as I said about the flights. But I think, honestly, this is a different tangent, but like everyone thinks that, we should stop flying. Flying's terrible, and it is, and we should. But it equals about 3.5% of all fossil fuels, of all carbon emissions, right? 3.5%, as opposed to animal agriculture, which is depending on which study you use, between 14.5% and 51%, right? And the difference there is huge. 3.5% as opposed between 14 and 50% is crazy, right? Why focus on planes when we could focus on something that will have an immediate, much bigger impact? And to me, to give up flying, especially for someone who lives in Japan and who's from the UK, to give up flying would mean to never see my family and friends again, right? That's a huge ask, right, of anybody to say that for the future of humanity, I'm not going to see my friends and family again. That's like, wow, that's difficult to do, right? But to eat something different 3 times a day is not really asking much of people. It's like, you still enjoy your food, you still eat 3 times a day, you're not really giving up anything, you're just changing. And what you'll find is you'll actually be healthier and probably live longer with less disease, right? So it's a win-win. Whereas flying, much less carbon impact, but it's difficult, I think, for people to give up, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you for that perspective about the flying and the food part, because it's something I'm struggling with as well. As I just talked about with Yuki, so my previous guest for the podcast. Because I do fly, as you right. I'm living here in Japan. I travel to see family, and in recent years, I've included like other destinations. Whereas originally I wasn't big on just traveling for sightseeing, and I have a few ideas in mind to kind of offset that. But as far as numbers go, though, although I think you're on the right track, you have the right numbers for the total, like worldwide weight of the plane, what planes produce as far as carbon, gas, etc. But on the individual level, though, it might be just because everyone's not flying, right? That is only limited to 3%. But everyone doesn't eat meat. But if you look at the individual level numbers, then as far as I looked into it, you can be plant-based and fly even once a year all the way to Europe and back, and you'll still be way more polluting the atmosphere than someone who's eating meat and not flying. And so that's disturbing, right?
Well, it's because basically it's 10% of humans that are doing all these flights, right? Most people are not flying, and I personally try to limit my flights. Usually it's like every 3 years we say we'll fly, right?
Okay.
But my dad's 82 now, and my mum's 73, so we want to get home. Before that they disappear. But you are right that it's a transatlantic return flight is probably as bad for the environment as eating meat for a year. You're right. Those statistics are correct, right? But it's not just the carbon, right? It's not with flying. It's basically carbon.
Yeah, well,
With,
I mean,
with the animals, it's the carbon emissions is one part of it.
Yeah.
And then you've got all the other the biodiversity.
The suffering,
You've got the suffering. You've got the biodiversity. The number one cause, 60% of all species loss on this planet, is to do with meat-eating.
Yeah. No,
habits,
I
right?
get you. I think what's hard to put together is the overall effects of, like here we're talking global warming when we're talking about like the emissions of planes and what the impact has on the environment. And sure, you don't see directly. It's not like if you eat meat, you're eating the flesh of a dead living being that has suffered to arrive on your plate. So if you don't eat the meat, you feel like directly that it's a good thing, if you're sensitive to that. But if you don't fly, you don't directly feel like you're doing. It's more numbers, right? It's data. It's hard to connect to that. But ultimately, climate, like global warming, the part that's caused by human societies, human activity, is going to have a huge impact on wildlife, on all living beings on this earth. And so you don't see it immediately. But I think there's one thing that's what I'm investigating right now. It's like everything that has to do with carbon offsetting, where you invest into solutions that help either capture carbon or something like that, and or reduce carbon emissions in the first place. And so if you're kind of paying to pollute, but on the other hand, there's no suffering involved, if you're offsetting exactly what you're, or even more, what you're kind of responsible for, then it's not like I'm giving to animal rights associations that I'm eating meat, because in that process you're still hurting animals. Whereas for planes, if you're flying but you're offsetting the carbon and the total is neutral there, you're not like causing any harm. As far as I understand, I might be wrong somewhere. I mean, if you look into tiny details, you might be better off not flying at all, that's for sure. But as you said, there are life choices where ultimately you could choose to move somewhere that would involve less flying, but aiming for perfection is usually a recipe for a bit of disaster, like burnout and etc. So as long as you're bringing more positive, I think, than negative.
I haven't gone into this too much, but I have read recently, I didn't actually read the whole thing, but I read headlines saying that, carbon offsetting doesn't actually work.
I read a bit of that as well.
It's not the way to go, and of course I think that's realistic. Of course it's not, but having said that, I think the difference between flying and I think what we are eating is like individuals can deal with what we eat, right? Our dietary changes, we can do that. When it comes to transportation, really that's down to governments, right? It costs to fly from Kumamoto to Tokyo, it costs about 9,000 yen. If I was to take the train, and I would much prefer to take the train, it would cost me more than double that. Then that's a huge problem. Why is it cheaper to fly than it is to take the bullet train, right? These kind of things we can't do anything about. Extinction Rebellion is where that comes in, right? Because join a group, individuals cannot do it on their own, but if you join that group, you can push governments to remove the subsidies that they give into airlines, because that's why it's cheaper, right? We're subsidizing all this cheap kerosene for them, right? And we're not giving, if we could take away the subsidies that we're giving to aviation and then give it to, JR, for example, then the price of air travel would go up and the price of electric rail travel would go down, right? These are things that governments can and should be doing. But the dietary change is something that, of course, governments can get involved in that as well by removing subsidies from factory farms and giving it to organic vegetable growers instead, and that will have the same impact. But it's something we can all do, and you don't have to miss out on anything, right? Flying, another benefit of visiting different countries, and I think we've both probably benefited from this, for myself massively, man. I got out of the UK, I lived in the Philippines, I lived in Taiwan, I lived in Vietnam, I lived in Japan, and it's been amazing, man. And because I've lived in those countries, I'm much more likely to read the news about those countries and get involved in those countries, and than if I hadn't lived abroad and visited all these countries. So travel's amazing, man. We need it, right? We need to visit different parts of the world. We need to see people in the Middle East laughing with their children and smiling, right? We need to see people in Japan, in Asia doing the same, so that we can realize that, hang on, we're all the same. Yes, we might look different. Yes, we might have different religions. Yes, we might have different customs and cultures, but at the core, we are all human, right? And you only really get that through travel. So it's one of those paradoxes, right? That we need to travel less, but we also need to travel more. So, that's up to governments, man. They need to give us affordable, fast, efficient rail travel, right? So that we don't need to fly. Whereas the dietary change, something we can do ourselves,
All right, got that. What do you think about the social costs of changing your diet, especially here in Japan, because you've definitely considered that aspect of things, I think. Do you think like it's something that should be taken into account in the way you advocate for change, or is it something that you think you don't especially have to address and you should really focus on other?
What do you mean when you...
Like the social cost would be like, because, you can enjoy the food, that's true. And there's a convenience cost as well, because you need to get used to it. But once you get used to it, even there's still a social cost as long as society is by and large omnivore. So you can't enjoy eating out as much with people, etc. Okay. So what do you think that has to be taken? How do you think that has to be taken into account in the way you approach people, especially Japanese people, when you try to talk about those things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too sure. So you mean like as in it's hard to go out with other people who are eating meat?
Yeah, well, because the way I heard you talk about, especially when we were talking about like flying compared to eating, it's I agree with you. It's way easier, in theory, to change your diet habits, especially when it's gradual, than to just give up on your one fly a year abroad, whether you're Japanese or not. But when it comes to changing your diet, and especially if it's something that's just not for health reasons, but also for ethical and especially when it's for ethical reasons, if it kind of gets in the way of you enjoying the company of others who don't change as much as you, that's something that is not a win-win there. It's going to be like a win-win-lose or something like that, right? And I think Japanese are very, very sensitive to that, especially in a culture where going out with friends is happening all the time.
Yeah, well, and that, what is it, the nail that stands up gets hammered down in Japan. And look, I'll be honest, it's in the UK, it's not a problem. Every single restaurant has got vegan options, right? So you never have to worry about not being able to eat with your friends, right? Whereas in Japan, that is a problem. Most restaurants don't have vegan options. You do kind of get excluded from a lot of meetups, right? And I can understand that some people being like, but it would be to say that to give that as a reason for not going vegan, I think would be an excuse, right? What you could do, and I've got friends that do this, they're vegan at home, but when they go out with their friends, they might eat some chicken, right? Of course, you're not vegan then, right? So let me rephrase that. You're plant-based at home, but then if you go out with your friends, you might eat some chicken or some fish, right? Doing that is better than nothing, right?
All right. Okay.
Well,
yeah. Thanks for your opinion on that. This is a very difficult topic, and I agree with you that that's one option. When I started being vegan, I was vegetarian outside and vegan at home. But even that became challenging for me. But I have the luxury of being different to begin with here in Japan, so being more different is not such a stretch. But when you're Japanese, and you're not already a kind of a different person compared to everyone else, like taking those kind of stances is it's not even a leap of faith. I think it's really hard, and I think that's the main hurdle is probably social here. So that's why the health aspect allows you to not you can have your cheat day, and you're not gonna feel like shit because you harm like living beings. So I think the health aspect is is the best way to approach things in Japan, and
maybe,
apparently you were.
Yeah. I think it probably is. Yeah, definitely Japanese people care about their health, and that's why that's one of the pillars on the site. So yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, cool. Well, I see that we're closing to 6:40 when you need to leave, and I wanted to just ask a few rapid questions. But before that, is there anything that you want to address, that you want to a message you want to send with this podcast, or maybe a question that I didn't ask?
No, by the way, I think it's good. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I'm impressed. I thought maybe you'd be asking questions from a sheet.
Well, usually I have that, but and thanks, because as I said, right, before the podcast, I'm lacking a bit of sleep, so I might not be as on point as usual. But thanks for the nice words. Is there
problem,
anything that you want to?
I would just say my message would be anyone listening, just to care, man, just care. And I don't know if you're vegan, I don't know if you fly or if you don't fly, but whatever your life is, we can all get involved in this, right? And we all need to get involved in it. So please do your research, and I would ask you to try plant-based food first before knocking it, before saying no way. Just try it, man. Go to Ripple Burger in Tokyo or any of the other amazing, tea tantans. I was there today. Absolutely incredible ramen, man. Go there, try that, and then come and tell me that vegan food doesn't taste good, because you're out of your mind. It's really amazing. So get on it, give it a try, and please join Extinction Rebellion.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. So I'd like to get into a few very rapid-fire questions. On a scale on 1 to 10, how weird are you? 10 being the weirdest.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me to say, because that would be. I need to ask other people about that, right? But probably pretty weird. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a favorite word that just comes to mind when you were being asked that question?
Not really, but no, not really. Favorite word, no.
Oh,
Love?
Really?
No.
Okay, fair enough. So if you could have a very short message on a huge billboard, let's say Shibuya crossing, on a big billboard, one message in text only, what would that be?
Share the love.
Share the love.
Share
Okay.
the love.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. Your favorite plant-based dish ever?
Ever? Difficult one there. Really I just had that tea tantans today, so that ramen's pretty good. The black sesame ramen. But the favorite, man, I don't know. I really like the Ripple Burger. My wife is a fantastic cook, by the way. She's got a website, www.bethechange.love, which has got Japanese. It's got lots of vegan videos on there, how to make vegan food. It's especially for the Japanese market. It's bilingual in English and Japanese, but there's lots of links to where you can buy vegan products in Japan, etc. So please take a look at that. Yeah.
So you don't have a clear answer for the favorite vegan dish. I mean, it's a hard one.
It's all good, man. My wife's cooking is incredible. She makes, as my dad commented, he was like, wow, it's really varied, right? Every day you're eating different stuff. And I was like, yeah, Dad, it's never the same, When I was a kid, it was like Monday was like curry, or Tuesday was spaghetti, Wednesday was hot dogs, Thursday was casserole. It was like just a repeat of the same foods over and over, right? And vegans are always told, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, and I'm like, no, man, there's probably 8 things that I can't eat that you eat, right? There's probably 5 animals, eggs, cheese, and fish, and that's it. And I'm eating all this different food that you've never, my dad, and I know most meat eaters are aware of avocados, but my dad was like, he's never had an avocado, man, in the UK. He's an 82-year-old man, he ain't had an avocado. He was like, oh, this is lovely. And I'm like, yeah, Dad, it's like, I haven't restricted my diet at all. I've just widened it to eat all of these different plants and fruits and, nuts and beans that I never used to eat. So it's the opposite. Meat eaters are the ones that are limiting their diet, not vegans, right?
Yeah, true.
So
true.
To answer your question, I love all the vegan food.
Cool.
That's
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. if there had to be only one of the products in the West that's now like the hype and everything about like plant-based products, vegan products, it doesn't even have to be plant-based. It could be like the lab-grown meat and stuff, whatever, that arrives in Japan, that would be sold in Japan. Which one do you think would be the best one to start?
I think personally, this is not something, I don't eat this really, but I think the Beyond Burger would be fantastic, right? The Impossible Burger. But let's be honest, I mean, a lot of people in Japan do eat burgers, and that is I want to see lab-grown fish, right? Lab-grown fish and lab-grown meat as well.
Yeah.
To come to Japan, that would be amazing. And I think when those two things happen, and they will happen very soon, then, you know, what kind of a person, when faced with something, a burger that's come from plants and a burger that's caused immeasurable pain and suffering, who's going to choose that if they both taste the same, right? And the health-wise, they've got the same protein. I mean, once you make people make that decision, I think people are going to feel really shitty about themselves if they choose the killing part over the plants, right?
Yeah, as long as the information is as accurate as possible regarding like all the background, because you know the industry is going to like try to push their own agenda, which is totally understandable, right? They're an industry. If you had to choose one personality, one famous person to stand for veganism that's not vegan now, or at least it's not standing like out as such, so they might, like, that person might already be vegan, but we don't know, and you want that one person would be standing for veganism, who would that be and why?
It's a good question. Like, from a Japanese perspective?
No, like worldwide. It could be worldwide. It could be Japan, but I don't know much about Japanese like famous people.
Yeah,
so
it's a difficult one, Florent, right? Because once you got to be careful what you wish for, right?
Donald Trump.
Once people have, that would be a good one, right? But once people are vegan, meat eaters stop listening to them. Have you noticed that?
Oh, yeah.
For example, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's vegan for sure, man. But he doesn't tell people he's vegan, right? He says that he's flexitarian.
Yeah. He's in Game Changers, though. Yes, so we'll see what he says in that. Yeah.
You know, I'm sure, without a doubt, that this guy is eating plant-based, right? He's massive friends with James Cameron. These guys are plant-based, and I think he's correct in that if you're flexitarian and you ask people to cut down on the meat, they're like, fair enough, mate. Yeah, okay. But if you're vegan and you ask people to cut down on meat, they're like, vegan message. So it's difficult, right? Once you maybe people being flexitarian and asking people to cut down is better. I don't know.
All right. Because a name. Give me a name.
Give me my Messi.
Okay.
Messi's plant-based in the season, right?
Soccer fans.
He's not vegan, but he's plant-based in the season for health reasons. But I mean, the Pope would have been cool.
Oh yeah.
The Pope would have been good. That $1 million vegan, I think he kind of lost. He should have done that, right?
Yeah. Well.